morning. Hey, welcome everyone. Good to see all of you. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal, religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. I want to begin, as usual, by welcoming all that you come with this morning, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, all that helps make you who you are is welcome here today. And this includes those of you who are joining us in the room, who regularly join us in the room here, as well as those who might be joining us for the first time. It's great to have you with us as well. And of course, it's wonderful having the many of you who are streaming with us this morning as well. So thanks to one and all for being here. Look forward to our service today, although I'm sad to note that our unity candle is lit here at the front of our sanctuary. This is something that we do in our church whenever we've lost a member during the week, and church member Owen Muir passed away unexpectedly earlier this week. I don't have the, I know it's a bit of a shock. He was here last week, and Owen was pretty much like a piece of furniture here. I mean, it was just so faithful to in his attendance. And I wish I could give you more details. I don't know the cause. I know they're looking into that natural causes, but they're still trying to figure out exactly what happened. So we will miss him, and we will have this candle lit during our service as a reminder of his light and his life. So let's just take a moment of quiet on behalf of Owen. Okay, not too long, because Owen was never quiet. He always had lots to say, didn't he? Well, why don't we take a few moments to greet one another this morning. Feel free to say hello to those you look forward to seeing each Sunday, and please make some new friends today. And if you are joining us for the first time, nobody has bitten anybody yet, so. tonight, shall we? All right, and I do hope that you'll stay around following our service for our social hour. There's coffee and tea in the back there, so you can have more conversation then. But let's move on now by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Our opening reflection today comes to us from Victoria Sanford, a UU minister. Each of us has a name, and a spirit, and a soul, if you will, a dignified personhood, which may not conform to what others think they see or what they may expect, but which shines brightly. It burns truly just the same. We can't see it, but we believe in it. As Unitarian Universalists, we are about creating space, open, gracious space, where each single one is honored and welcomed. We say, I see you, stranger, friend, companion, living creature, fellow traveler on the same round earth. I cannot know, even if I know you well, even if I am your mother, your partner, your colleague in the next cubicle at work, I cannot know what it's like to be you. And therefore, presumptions and assumptions, whether born of convention or convenience or prejudice or ignorance or fear, need to all fall away. We say, the divinity within me greets the divinity within you. At least we try to say it. That's where we begin. We try and we learn and take risks and make mistakes and scatter forgiveness like wildflower seeds everywhere we go.
Our first in-service hymn of the morning is number 19, The Sun That Shines. And on top of what Gordon said, which was lovely, this is a song of being grateful for all we have. Please rise as you're willing and able.
We'll now kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning, and I want to begin as we have been as of late by kindling a candle on behalf of the people of Ukraine. and other people in that part of the world who are suffering unnecessary hostility and violence there. Also want to kindle a candle for church members George Fearing and Marina Ladich. I think a lot of you remember Marina and her sister Elena, who was also a member of our congregation, lost their parents rather unexpectedly just over a year ago. And the Ladiches were, Myrta and Mike, of course, were also longtime beloved members of this congregation. So they were away dispersing their ashes, spreading their ashes in various parts of the region, and came back only to have George's father pass away. So now they are passed away on the 18th, Monday the 18th. So they've gone through a lot these past few months, in addition to dealing with COVID and those sort of things. So really wanted to let you know what they're going through, so when we light our candles on their behalf, we're doing it with lots of compassion and sentiments for them. So let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others that you might be thinking of, and if you'd like, you can name them aloud at this time. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
My sweet Lord, my Lord, my Lord, I really want to know you, I really want to be with you, I really want to see you, Lord, but it takes so long, my Lord, my sweet Lord, my Lord, my Lord, I really want to know you, I really want to go with you, I really want to show you, Lord, but it won't be long, my Lord, my sweet Lord, my Lord, I really want to see you, I really want to see you, I really want to see you, Lord, I really want to see you, Lord, but it won't take long, my Lord, my sweet Lord, my Lord, I really want to know you,
Thank you very much. Louis, I didn't get to meet you before the service, but I'm glad to be introduced to you via your talent.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, great to have you today. Thank you. It is time for our story for all ages. And since there are individuals here of some ages, that counts. As usual, I have brought a friend because I need help with these things. Okay, here he is. This is my friend Obstinate Eddie. Would you please say hello, Eddie?
Good day.
Sorry about that. You probably remember that Obstinate Eddie tends to say the opposite of what he means. Right, Eddie?
Wrong.
Okay, that means I'm right. So, Eddie, have you been enjoying your summer break?
Yes.
Well, that's too bad. What haven't you liked about it?
It's been too cold.
Yeah, I agree. It's blazing hot lately. I guess this means you're looking forward to getting back to school in a few weeks, huh?
I can hardly wait.
Well, true. Last year, I think you got into a lot of trouble at school, didn't you?
Yes.
Yes? No, you're not telling the truth. You got into a lot of trouble, didn't you?
No.
Okay, that's right, because you had to go to the principal's office quite a bit, if I remember correctly.
You don't remember correctly.
And that's what I thought. So maybe next year, instead of going to recess when you're supposed to be in class and staying in the classroom when you're supposed to be at recess, you'll try doing the opposite. How does that sound?
Bad.
Bad, huh? Well, I'm glad you agree. So how about I help by asking your teachers to remember to instruct you to go to class when it's time for recess and to go to recess when it's time for class. Would that be helpful?
Not at all.
Good. I'll take care of it. But hey, you still have several weeks of summer break left, and it's supposed to cool off this week. So how does that sound?
Terrible.
I'm glad you're excited about it. Do you have any big plans?
None whatsoever.
Lots, huh? Like what?
Well, I'm staying in town, at home, and sleeping in my own bed.
Wow, a camping trip. That sounds like lots of fun. Where are you going?
To Death Valley, California.
Wow, Banff, Canada. That sounds perfect this time of the year. I hear it's actually in the 70s there right now, but it could get pretty cold at night, so be sure and take a warm coat just in case.
I'll only take shorts and t-shirts.
Well, I'm glad you're going to be prepared for anything. So, you know what I like about you, Eddie?
Yes, don't tell me.
I'm glad you asked, because I like it that even though we have opposite ideas, we can still be friends, we can still understand each other, and we can still get along just fine. Do you agree?
Yes, I don't agree.
Well, that makes two of us. And I hope the rest of your summer is terribly boring, that you have a miserable time camping, and that you get into lots of trouble when you go back to school next year.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
Well, I'm glad you think so, and I don't look forward to seeing you next time.
Me too.
Say goodbye, Eddie.
Hello.
I have to think too hard after that one. After that, it's time to move into a time of meditation. Make yourself comfortable, put your feet on your floor, close your eyes if you wish. Take a deep breath in and breathe out, and just reflect on these words of Victoria Safford. How does our faith hold brokenness, injustice, and suffering? Clumsily? Gingerly? Tenderly? Bravely? Lovingly? Reverently? Humbly and deliberately? Imperfectly?
reading today is a brief quote. Will the world ever learn what true religion is? Will it ever learn that mercy and pity and charity are more in the sight of the infinite than all the creeds and dogmas of the earth? Clarence Darrow.
Sunrise doesn't last all morning. The cloudburst doesn't last all day. Seems my love has left you without warning. It's not always gonna be this great. All things must pass. All things must pass away. Sunset doesn't last all evening. A mind can blow those clouds away. After all this, my love must be leaving. It's not always gonna be this great. All things must pass. All things must pass away. All things must pass away. All things must pass. None of life's strings can last. So I must be on my way to face another day. Now darkness only stays in the nighttime. In the morning it fades away. Daylight is good at arriving at the right time. It's not always gonna be this great. All things must pass. All things must pass away. All things must pass. All things must pass away. So I must be on my way to face another day.
Thank you so much for both your truth and your talent. That song, I think, complements my sermon well today. So Unitarian Universalism, which formally began only 61 years ago in 1961, is rooted in a unique and rare liberal religious tradition, which has since been steadily severing itself from, becoming the antithesis of its namesakes in the process. I say liberal religion is rare because, to my way of thinking, liberalism is a pro-human ideology devoted to the principles of freedom, reason, and tolerance. There are other religions that demonstrate interest in one or two of these principles, but not all of them. The only religions I know of, or only religion I should say that I know of that does, is really Unitarianism, which originated in Eastern Europe during the 16th century at the start of the Renaissance, and its cousin, American Unitarianism, which emerged independently during the Enlightenment period. Universalism, as an ideology, began in the 2nd century CE as a disbelief in eternal hell. It didn't begin as a disbelief in hell altogether, only that a loving God could not punish anyone there forever. Perhaps sinners would spend a little time in hell, purifying their souls, but eventually all will be released from the torments because of Christ's sacrifice, hence the term universalism, everyone gets saved, versus a predetermined few, which was the Calvinist idea. Over the centuries, this initial idea of universalism as a disbelief in eternal hell evolved into a disbelief in hell altogether, then came to emphasize more the unconditional love of God and the inclusion of all souls, which is where it was when it became an official religion with the formation of the Universalist Church of America in 1793. Prior to that, it was an ideology, a heretical one at that. With its emphasis on universal love, Universalism is obviously a tolerant religion. It was also an oppressed religion because denying the existence of hell, again, was considered heresy by the rest of the Christian world. As such, Universalists also believed in religious freedom, that they should be free, that is, to practice their religion without being abused by others. Universalism was not, however, overly committed to the use of reason, and thus cannot be considered a liberal religion. Liberalism itself is rooted in the Renaissance thinking that began in the early 14th century and became widespread during the Enlightenment periods of the 17th and 18th centuries, also known as the Age of Reason. Renaissance, which means renewal, refers to the 14th century, or what began in the 14th century, that is, as a renewed interest taken in the thinking of the early Greek philosophers of the 7th century BCE, so 2,600 years ago. That was the first time in human history that some began attempting to explain the world in natural rather than supernatural terms. It was a huge leap forward in human progress. Historically speaking, philosopher Bertrand Russell says it was one of the most spectacular events in history. Nothing like it has ever occurred before or since. This is so because in order to seek natural explanations for our reality, explanations that don't involve deities, myths, or the fates, we need to trust in human agency and reason. In this sense, the birth of Greek civilization 2,600 years ago represents the beginning of humanistic thinking, which has a positive view of humanity and a belief in human potential. That was new. It only follows then that humans should be free to think and to decide for themselves, and that what they think and decide should be based upon human reason rather than divine commands and authoritarian decrees. And in order to consider the many possibilities, society at large must be, or at least become, tolerant of different beliefs. Right? If we're all free to think for ourselves, then societies have to be tolerant. So those three go together: freedom, reason, and tolerance. They create one another. Now, this kind of openness and curiosity was squelched by the church during the Dark Ages, but reemerged during the Renaissance. That's what was renewed. That's what the Renaissance renewed, an interest in what had been before a near millennium of darkness. And Unitarians were among the very first to attempt fashioning a society based upon reason, freedom, and tolerance, with the Edict of Torda, issued by the Hungarian king John Sigismund Zapola in 1568. Transylvania was the part of Hungary situated between the Ottoman Empire to the southeast and to the Austrian Empire to the west. And because of this, it had far more diversity than most societies at the time could have expected to peaceably withstand. It had three main native ethnic groups: the Zelkers, the Magyars, and the Saxons. Its economic diversity included nobles, serfs, and peasants, and its religious diversity included Muslims, Jews, Christians, both Catholic and Protestant. How is that for being ripe for conflict? So King Sigismund held a conference to hear what various religious leaders in the region in Transylvania had to say. Now that's the use of reason, right? Being open to hearing different ideas. Rather than outlawing them, let's have a conference and we'll listen to all of them. Inspired most by the Unitarian who spoke, Ferenc David, the king wisely chose to make his kingdom Unitarian because it allowed him to remain inclusive to all the others. Well, that's a smart king. He and his new Unitarian bishop, Ferenc David, almost immediately issued the Edict of Torda, the first religious freedom law in human history, commanding that in our dominions there will be freedom of conscience. And no one shall be reviled for his religion by anyone, and it is not permitted that anyone should threaten anyone else by imprisonment or removal from his post for his teaching. 1568. It's amazing. As retired professor of Unitarian history David Bomball says, when King Sigismund identified himself as a Unitarian and found the majority of the nation supporting him, he only demanded of those who disagreed that they live in peace with those with whom they disagree. So reason, freedom, tolerance are the foundation and the heart of Unitarianism. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise, especially those who would now attempt to tell you with no historical evidence that ours is a covenantal religion, whatever that means. Ours is a liberal religion, based especially on freedom, which is the very root of what the word liberal means, liberty, and why ours is rightly referred to as a liberal religion. The respected 20th century Unitarian minister A. Powell Davies says the founders of our religion wanted to form a church which was definitely based on freedom. And in his 1945 book, A History of Unitarianism, Reverend Earl Wilbur Morse writes that our religion is defined by the fundamental principles of freedom, reason, and tolerance. American Unitarianism developed separately from Eastern European Unitarianism, but shared the latter's commitment to these three principles. Right, Eastern European Unitarianism emerged during the Renaissance. American Unitarianism was born during the Enlightenment, when the ideas forged during the Renaissance were flourishing throughout Western society. So it was the same ideas that inspired the emergence of the same values, the same principles, American Unitarianism. In the U.S., it was initially called Arminianism, based on the idea that human beings have the capacity for both good and evil. It was, that is, a rejection of the belief in original sin and innate human depravity. Believing instead in human potential and agency, like the early Greek philosophers, meant each person has inherent worth and dignity, and should, and therefore everyone should be free to speak and think for themselves, and to have a voice in how they are governed. Right? It's the emergence of democracy, which is why many of the Enlightenment founders of American democracy were also Unitarians. The Universalists had also made their way to the Americas during the Enlightenment period, and as noted, they established the Universalist Church of America. It's the first time it was formalized, the belief was formalized into a religion. They had much in common with Unitarianism, along with a couple of major differences: theology and class. You'd think we would want to resolve those before. They only flirted with the idea of joining together for more than a century without our rich past, wherein both our differences and our values lie. Right? Fear of conflict erupting caused us to not talk about our past, which contained our differences, but also our values. Thus, instead of being an association of Unitarians and Universalists, right, the Unitarian Universalist Association, we suddenly began calling ourselves Unitarian Universalist, with no clear idea what a UU was. In his 2004 sermon, Why Unitarian Universalism is Dying, Reverend Davidson Lohr called Unitarian Universalism a religion that had never existed anywhere, and to which no one of any note in history had ever belonged. Right? There was no such thing as a UU until 1961. Or anything called Unitarian Universalism. Although Unitarians and Universalists had been around for hundreds of years before 1961, there had never been such a thing as Unitarian Universalist or Unitarian Universalism. And this is why today's religious identity surveys now refer to ours as an NRM, a new religious movement, even though its namesakes are hundreds of years old. Right? This church has been here since 1887, long before 1961. Unwilling to look at our past to recall what we are about, the new UUA or UU Association conducted a survey in 1967, right, 6 years after the merger, aimed at profiling the typical Unitarian Universalist. Of the 12,000 members surveyed from 800 congregations, less than 3% claimed to believe in a supernatural being. Less than 3%. 28% considered God an irrelevant concept. 57% did not consider theirs a Christian religion, and 52% preferred a distinctive humanistic religion. It should be kept in mind that at the time of the consolidation, almost 83% of those merged were Unitarians. Universalism was already on its last legs, which explains why at the time almost none of us believed in a deity and why a majority of us were also humanist. Back then, we still knew what we were about. Yet over the decades since, UUs, as we are now called, have become sore pressed to explain religion even to ourselves. Our religion even to ourselves, right? Let alone anyone else. Instead of drawing upon our lengthier and larger history rooted in Enlightenment, liberalism, and the humanistic ethic, to remember that we are about freedom, reason, and tolerance, we now attempt to augment the nebulous meaning of Unitarian Universalism by adding still other adjectives before it, right? Calling ourselves Christian UUs and pagan UUs and humanist UUs and so on. As I say in the Gadfly paper, such descriptions would have been both unnecessary and inconceivable prior to the merger, at least not any less than it would be today to call oneself a Buddhist Pentecostal or a pagan Baptist. To prove the point, in 2005, there was another UUA survey which asked its members, what holds us together? One participant said, it's the support network. Another saw the UU movement as an interreligious dialogue. Another said UU congregations are comprised of people who didn't fit in anywhere else. Still others actually complained about us not having a common belief. This is where the UUA falls down, they said, and why you have CUPS, the UU pagan group, and the Buddhists and the Christians and all of these little subgroups, because we offer the hope of a spiritual journey and we offer no tools to do it with. Oddly, the Commission report concludes, despite consensus within the Church that the liberal message of Unitarian Universalism is important in this troubled world, we find it difficult to articulate that message clearly. We know we're important, we just don't know why. Oh my gosh. Perhaps this is so because having avoided our past, we have developed an identity crisis. We don't know who we are. As Unitarian Walter Hurst, editor of Redeeming Time, wrote in 1999, we too frequently behave as though Unitarian Universalism was born without historical and theological antecedents. We will continue to ignore our past only at the peril of losing our identity as a religious people. The people saw what was happening, what was coming for a long time. And this, I believe, is where our once liberal religion is today. Suffering the consequences of having lost our identity as a liberal religious people. This has created a void that is now being filled by a fringe group of fanatics who are working steadily to redefine Unitarian Universalism into its very antithesis. Listening to them, we can only conclude that they hate the very religion they have chosen to lead. They refer to our venerable tradition as a white supremacist organization, which from its very beginnings was firmly on the side of abolition and suffrage. They further claim UUism is founded upon a trinity of errors: individualism, exceptionalism, and anti-authoritarianism. The very qualities many of us think are what make us great, and certainly what make us liberal. The illiberalism of the UUA, leadership, further manifest as complete intolerance for dissenting voices and an eagerness to punish heretics by destroying their reputations and their livelihoods with no shred of evidence or decency. If anyone disagrees, instead of shouting witch or heretic, there are immediate, panicked, knee-jerk accusations of racist, homophobe, transphobe, ableist, and so forth. Today, because I wrote a book outlining all of this, for which I was condemned, censured, and excommunicated, I am listed on the UUA's website as having been defrocked and ethically unfit for ministry because I am a bully. All with never a single citation from my banned book. Talk about projection. And I am only one among other Unitarian Universalists who've been made an example of, leaving many others too timid to speak out against the religious fanatics who have overtaken our once liberal religion. Meanwhile, the UUA leadership continues to redefine Unitarian Universalism as a covenantal religion, which seems to be a euphemism for church doctrine. It's a covenant. As Reverend Frederick Muir, the intellectual architect of this plan, has said, we cannot do both covenant and individualism. See? If we're going to be a covenantal religion, no more individualism, folks. How does that make you feel? And I take this to mean that by turning the UUA into a covenantal religion, individual congregations and individual members will be held accountable, a word they're using more and more, for upholding that which Muir has also called something that has eluded Unitarian Universalism, a doctrine of church. Yes, our non-creedal religion just got a creed that ministers are already being held accountable to, and soon so will our congregations. To ensure this plan is not interrupted, in recent years the UUA leadership has established changes making our democratic processes a farce by assuring no one can make a serious run for any leadership positions other than those few candidates that they have hand-selected. All of this leads me to conclude that there is nothing those of us concerned can do to make the UUA immediately change its course. I've been trying for 3 years. Given what I'm seeing, I no longer believe it's possible. I do believe the illiberal mindset that has overtaken Unitarian Universalism has overtaken many other liberal organizations too, and that mindset is beginning to wane throughout Western culture because it's been so destructive. It's not an ideology that works or leads anywhere. But it will be well into the next decade before its failure is recognized by the UUA leadership and that new leaders might begin to be put in a place to restore us to sanity. And by then, 2035, 2040, there is likely to have been too much damage done to our already tiny religion, and there may be too few of us left for Unitarian Universalism to survive. And that's just the numbers, right? This is why I have said that liberal religion is now dead in America. Because Unitarian Universalism is the only liberal religion, or at least was the only liberal religion in America, devoted to reason, freedom, and tolerance. And I don't mean to suggest there aren't some UU churches like ours that remain liberal, but currently there is no liberal religious organization connecting us to those outside our own church communities. We are not part of something bigger than ourselves. We are not part of a religion. If I'm correct, then we now have only two choices: to wait it out and see what happens, during which we are likely to only witness the further erosion of what has become our unrecognizable religion, or the religious liberals among us must leave the UUA and create a new organization rooted in our liberal history and values. But if liberal religion is to be revived in America and in our world, I shouldn't say that. Let me preface that by saying I'm willing to help with that endeavor, but I'm not going to lead the charge. And not that I like to charge ahead with things, but I'm not a great organizer, so that's not my thing. But I'll help. But even then, if it is going to be revived, then I believe the time has come for us to admit we must move on. That the UUA has become a lost cause. And what matters most is our historic commitment to living out those perennial values. Those perennial values. Right? Perennial. They stay. They have lasting power. Reason, freedom, and tolerance. For these are the values that make us liberal. They're what makes our church a free church. They are never diminished when we share them with others, and they can never be taken away. Thank you.
I couldn't help but remember that our church name changed in the early 1990s from the Unitarian Church of Spokane to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling a little confused then. We're going to sing Bob Dylan's The Times They Are A-Changin'. If you would rise as you're willing and able. We're going to do verses, for what it's worth, 1, 2, and 5. Okay. Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'. Come writers and critics who prophesy with your pen, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that it's naming. For the loser now will be later to win, for the times they are a-changin'. The line it is drawn, the curse it is cast. The slower now will be later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last, for the times they are a-changin'.
Right there. There you go. As we move into a time of benediction here, our closing words today come from Amy Zucker Morgenstern. In every person we meet, especially those who cause us discomfort, we find an opportunity to grow, to learn, to go further along the path of transformation. Every single one is our teacher. May the next week bring you many such meetings to help you become the person you want to be. Welcome them with joy. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.